In this video you will learn how to mount a gouache painting done on watercolor paper on a rigid support, how to seal the support to protect it from moisture, and which products to use, which varnishes to use for gouache paintings, how to varnish gouache paintings so that the final layer of the removable varnish can be easily removed and replaced, which will make your varnished gouache painting archival, how to frame a varnished gouache painting, and how colors in different gouache paintings respond to varnishing. If you want to save the information provided in this video, you can download it in the free PDF at the link in the description. I've often been asked about varnishing gouache paintings and framing them without glass, similar to oil or acrylic paintings. In this video, I'll show you how I prepare my gouache paintings for varnishing and then varnish and frame them without glass, making sure that they are archival and will last a very long time. What I realized while varnishing my gouache paintings is that varnish restores the true characteristics of the colors. It makes colors look fresh from the palette. In other words, the colors started to look as they had looked before they had dried on the paper, and my paintings start to emerge exactly as I had intended them to. I was absolutely amazed at how vivid and rich the colors in my paintings had become when I varnished them. At the end of this video, I have included the varnishing process of several different gouache paintings, so that you can see how the varnish affected each of them. You will see how the varnish changed the colors and values in those paintings, making the contrast stronger and the colors richer. If you want to varnish a gouache painting, you need to keep in mind that varnish can't be removed from a gouache painting. So before varnishing your painting, you need to be certain that you are happy with it and that you are not going to make any changes to it. Also, make sure you have signed the painting. Your painting should be completely dry when you varnish it. A week in a dry room should be enough for a gouache painting to dry properly. To varnish and frame your gouache painting done on watercolor paper without glass, you ideally want it to be mounted on an acid-free rigid support, like an illustration board, watercolor board, or mat board. Thus, your painting will preserve its shape in the frame. Okay, so I had this painting that I painted as a demonstration in my Color Mastery online course. It is done on hot-pressed watercolor paper. I'm going to frame it in a frame without glass, so I will need to mount the painting on this watercolor board. Then I will have to properly protect its surface with varnish. I'll explain what I mean by properly later in this video, and only then will I be able to frame the painting. To mount this painting on board, I need to cut off the excess paper. To do that, I need to keep in mind that the frame will cover approximately 4 mm of the artwork on each of the 4 sides. So I need to leave a little bit of white paper around the painting. Thus, the frame will cover only 1 or 2 mm of the actual painting. I take measurements and cut off the unnecessary paper. Now I need to cut a piece of watercolor board of the same size. Done. Before mounting an artwork on board, I usually seal the board on all sides with a layer of water-resistant PVA glue. It can also be called wood glue. Thus, the painting will be protected from moisture on the back side with glue and on the front side with varnish. I usually add one layer of water-resistant PVA glue to each of the sides of the board and to all its lateral planes. If the glue is very thick, I slightly dilute it with water. So I'll cover now one side of this board and the lateral sides with the glue and let the board dry for a few hours. I will cover the other side when this particular side is dry to touch. 3 hours have passed. The board is dry to touch and I can cover its other side with the glue now. I'm checking the lateral planes too. Now I'll let the board dry for a day before attaching the artwork to it. Almost 24 hours have passed. The board is completely dry. It is now protected well from moisture. The glue has also made this board sturdy. Now I can adhere it to my painting. To do this, I usually use a soft gel acrylic medium, gloss or matte. It is gentle to paper and it doesn't bend boards as much as glue does. Any brand of this gel will work for this. I cover the board with a layer of this medium and put the painting on top. Because I have sealed both sides of this board with the glue, the board doesn't absorb the gel, which makes the adhesion between the board and the painting better. Now I take a plastic sleeve, put it on top of the painting, and press my fingers gently against the paper. I can also use a brayer to apply even pressure to the surface of the painting. This process prevents air bubbles from forming between the painting and the support. Good. Now I need to put this painting under pressure. I will use a couple of heavy books for that. It will prevent the board from bending during the drying process. I'll leave the painting under this weight for 24 hours. And then I will remove the books and leave the painting out to dry for another day. Alright, 2 days have passed. All moisture has evaporated out of the board and the painting. I prefer mounting my gouache paintings on board before applying varnish to them, because if you varnish your painting first and then start adhering it to a board, you can damage the shiny varnished surface. Therefore, I usually adhere my paintings to boards first, and only then do I apply varnish to them. This process seems to be taking a lot of time, but that's only because this painting was done on paper and had to be mounted on board. If I had painted it on a pre-made board, I would only have needed to varnish and frame it. So, if you are going to varnish your gouache paintings and frame them without glass, it's a good idea to paint them on pre-made boards. Even better if your board is standard size, so that when the painting is finished, you only need to varnish it and frame it in a standard sized pre-made frame that can be purchased at any art store. So, this painting is ready for varnishing. And this is where things get a bit more complicated. If you paint for fun, you can simply cover your paintings with a layer of varnish and frame them without glass. However, if you sell your work and want your paintings to be considered archival, you need to use light-fast paints, acid-free painting supports, and you need to varnish your painting in the right way, which means that you need to make sure that the final layer of varnish that comes in contact with the ambient air can be easily removed and replaced without damaging the paint layer. To make this possible with this particular painting, I need first to apply a layer of varnish that will permanently seal the water-soluble paint surface of this gouache painting and make it waterproof. Then, when the varnish has dried, I will have to apply an isolation coat to it. An isolation coat is a non-yellowing, non-removable clear acrylic medium that permanently seals the surface of the painting and provides a protective barrier for varnish application and removal. Removable varnish should be applied after this isolation coat, so that if someone in the distant future would want to remove this varnish and replace it, they would be able to do that without damaging the paint surface, because the isolation coat would protect the painting. It would be great if we could apply an isolation coat directly to our gouache paintings and then just varnish them like acrylic artists do. But the problem is that the mediums that should be used to create an isolation coat are all water-based, so we can't apply any of them directly to a gouache painting, because this would reactivate the gouache colors and ruin the artwork. That's why, to apply an isolation coat, I need to seal the water-soluble paint surface of this gouache painting with a water-resistant varnish first. For this first coat, only those varnishes can be used that are suitable for varnishing watercolor paintings. To save you time, I have listed some of them in the free PDF that you can download at the link in the description to this video. In the PDF, I have summarized everything covered in this video, and I have also added some extra tips. The two varnishes I was able to test directly on my gouache paintings to create this first protective coat are Kramer varnish in the form of spray and Daler-Rowney watercolor varnish in a glass bottle. This one should be applied with a brush. Both of these varnishes are gloss, and they have very similar effects on gouache paintings. They make values deeper and the colors more vibrant. Today I will be using this Daler-Rowney watercolor varnish, because I can apply it with the brush instead of spraying it on. Sennelier has a similar product, which I will provide a link to in the PDF as well. These varnishes are based on colorless synthetic resins that do not yellow. There is an important detail about these painted varnishes for watercolor. To dilute them, if necessary, and clean the brushes after their application, only alcohol can be used. Also, these varnishes are non-removable. Another important detail is that for this first coat, you can use only gloss varnishes, because they are the clearest. If you want your painting to have a matte finish, you can complete the varnishing process by applying a matte varnish as the final removable coat. I'll do that to one of my paintings later in this video. I prefer painted varnishes over sprayed varnishes because they level out more evenly and have to be applied in a single thick coat. If you are going to use spray varnishes, keep in mind that they have to be applied in light coats 2 or 3 times in different directions until the painting is completely sealed. And you need to let the varnish dry well between layers. Spray varnishes should be applied in a well-ventilated room, and you should avoid inhaling the vapors. Alright, so now I'll apply this varnish to make the paint surface of this painting waterproof. I take a soft brush and start covering the painting with the varnish gradually. I try to apply the varnish in one layer. This particular varnish is very thick, and it dries to a crystal clear, glass-like finish. When varnishing a painting this way, avoid going back over the already covered areas with your brush. Try to cover your painting in just one layer. This varnish levels out well, but you need to apply it quickly as it dries fast. Now I have to let this painting dry well for a couple of days before applying an isolation coat to it. 2 days have passed. The varnish has dried. The surface of the painting is nice and glossy. Now that the paint surface is sealed, I can apply an isolation coat to it. This coat will create a permanent barrier. Any varnish added after this coat can be removed safely. Most removable varnishes can be removed with turpentine or mineral spirit. To create an isolation coat, you can use either of these two products. Option 1. Golden Isolation Coat. This product is ready for application. Option 2. Soft Gel Gloss Medium. This is what I will use today. For the isolation coat, it should be diluted 2 parts gel to 1 part water. Only the gloss gel can be used for an isolation coat. Matte gels can make your painting look cloudy. Remember, an isolation coat is permanent. It can be removed. The medium looks cloudy now, but after its application it will dry to an absolutely clear coat. When applying an isolation coat, try not to overwork it. Stop when the entire surface of your painting is still wet. It will prevent bubbles and brushstrokes from being left on the surface of the painting. This approach applies to painted varnishes too, by the way. This coat has to dry well before I apply the final removable varnish layer to it. The removable varnish doesn't have to be a specific varnish for watercolor or gouache, but it should be suitable for varnishing acrylic paintings, because the isolation coat is basically an acrylic film, so you need to be sure that your varnish will adhere to it. If you are going to use a water-based polymer varnish as your final removable coat, you will need to let the isolation coat dry for about 24 hours. If your varnish is mineral spirit based, like the one I like to use, you will need to wait about 3 days before applying it to the isolation coat to let the water thoroughly evaporate, because you don't want any water to get trapped under the varnish. For this final coat, you can use either gloss, satin or matte varnishes that are suitable for acrylic paintings. I will use this Winsor & Newton gloss varnish. This is my favorite varnish for oil paintings, and it also can be used on acrylic paintings. I again am trying not to brush over the same areas that have already been painted, so that the varnished surface is uniform. Now I'll let this varnish dry for a day, and then I will finally be able to frame this painting. I really like how gloss varnishes make my gouache paintings look like oil paintings. But what about matte varnishes? I have never tried those on my gouache paintings, but I've got one and I'm going to try it on this gouache painting that I also painted for my online course. I want to see how different gouache paintings covered with gloss and matte varnishes look. I have already applied the watercolor varnish and an isolation coat to this painting. Now I'll cover it with this matte varnish. Notice that the label on the varnish says that this varnish is for acrylic and oil paintings. If it said that the varnish was for oil paintings only, then I wouldn't use it. For this coat, we need to use a varnish that is suitable for acrylic paintings. When using matte and satin varnishes, avoid multiple layer applications, because these varnishes contain a mattifying agent that can make your painting look cloudy. Alright, the varnish has dried. You can see how matte the surface of the painting has become. The varnish hasn't affected the colors in any way. It only eliminated the shine and reflections. This painting has dried too. Its surface is hard and glossy. Let's compare it with the painting that was covered with the matte varnish. Now let's see how these paintings look in the frames that I ordered for them. I'll simply put each of these paintings in their frames and use pieces of foam core as backing boards for the frames. Nice! Frames always make such a huge difference. As you can see, this glossy painting looks very similar to an oil painting. I like this because even though I love to paint with oils, painting with gouache is pure pleasure and it provides some unique opportunities for exploring color. So I'm glad that now I can use gouache without a compromise and frame my gouache paintings just like I frame my oils. I really like the look of this painting as well. I'll definitely use matte varnishes for my gouache paintings too. I have also framed a couple of other paintings. This is our dog Sasha, whom we love and adore. And this is a Venice painting that I did a few months ago. This is one of my recent paintings. I got this pre-made frame in a home decor store. I like how this painting looks in it. In a couple of minutes you will be able to see how varnish changed the appearance of these paintings. But before that, I would like to conduct an experiment with this painting that I have covered with matte varnish. Imagine that in 100 years, someone would want to replace the varnish on this painting due to smoke, dust, and impurities. If I have done everything right, they would be able to remove the matte varnish down to the isolation coat and then cover the painting with a new fresh layer of varnish. So now I'll try to remove this varnish. Since the varnish is matte and the isolation coat is glossy, I will notice when I reach the isolation coat. On the website of the manufacturer, it was said that this varnish could be removed with mineral spirit or turpentine. So I'll apply pure turpentine to the surface of the painting to dissolve the varnish. I am gently working the brush into the surface to accelerate the process. This is not the right way to remove varnish from large paintings, but it works well for small paintings like this one. Okay, now I'll use a paper towel and remove the turpentine along with the dissolved varnish. I might need to repeat this a few times. The surface of the painting has become glossy again, which means that I have reached the isolation coat. As you can see, the painting is still in a great condition, and a new layer of removable varnish can be applied to it now. So this seems to prove that this method of varnishing gouache paintings works perfectly. The layer of the removable varnish serves as a glass, and when it gets old or dirty, it can easily be replaced. Now you will be able to see how varnish has changed the appearance of these paintings. From what I have seen so far, varnish seems to make saturated colors look even more vivid, and it makes dark and middle value colors deeper, which increases contrast in the paintings. I am truly happy with the results I've gotten from varnishing my gouache paintings, but you decide for yourself whether you like them or not. If you want to save all the information provided in this video, you can download it in the free PDF at the link in the description to this video. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching.